The morning sun cast long shadows across Bagram Airfield as Captain Sarah Chen walked toward her A-10 Thunderbolt II. The familiar weight of her flight gear felt comforting against her shoulders, but today carried an unusual tension in the air. She had been flying combat missions over Afghanistan for 8 months now, and the routine of pre-flight checks had become second nature. Sarah paused beside the nose of her aircraft, running her gloved hand along the painted shark teeth that decorated the front. The A-10 Warthog, as it was affectionately known, was not the prettiest aircraft in the Air Force inventory, but it was built for one purpose: close air support for ground troops. Its twin engines mounted high on the fuselage and its massive 30mm GAU-8 cannon made it a fearsome sight to enemies below. "Morning, Captain," called out Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, her dedicated crew chief. He emerged from beneath the aircraft with a maintenance clipboard, his face showing the concentration of a man who took his job seriously. Rodriguez had been working on A-10s for 12 years, and Sarah trusted him completely with her life. "How's she looking today, Rodriguez?" Sarah asked, accepting the clipboard to review the maintenance log. The entry showed routine inspections and minor adjustments, nothing that would ground the aircraft. "She's ready to fly, ma'am. All systems checked out green during the morning inspection. Fuel is topped off, and your ordnance load is configured for today's mission profile." Rodriguez gestured toward the pylons underneath the wings, which carried a mix of Maverick missiles and general-purpose bombs. Sarah nodded and began her own walk-around inspection. This was a ritual she never skipped, regardless of how thorough she knew Rodriguez had been. In combat flying, redundancy in safety checks could mean the difference between coming home and becoming a statistic. She examined each control surface, checked for hydraulic leaks, and verified that all external equipment was properly secured. The mission briefing that morning had been straightforward. Intelligence reports indicated Taliban forces were massing in a valley approximately 40 miles northeast of the base. A special operations team was moving into position to conduct surveillance, and Sarah's flight of 2 A-10s would provide overwatch and close air support if needed. It was the kind of mission the Warthog was designed for. As Sarah completed her pre-flight inspection, she noticed 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons taxiing past her parking spot. The sleek fighters looked almost delicate compared to her heavily armored attack aircraft. The F-16 pilots were known for their swagger and confidence, flying fast and high above most threats. Sarah had nothing against them personally, but there had always been a subtle rivalry between the fighter and attack pilot communities. "Warthog pilots are just bus drivers," she had heard one F-16 pilot joke in the officers' club last week. "All they do is fly low and slow." Sarah had not responded at the time, but the comment had stung more than she cared to admit. She knew the critical importance of her mission and the courage it took to fly low-altitude attack runs in heavily defended areas. Climbing into the cockpit of her A-10, Sarah settled into the familiar surroundings. The instrument panel was more utilitarian than elegant, designed for functionality rather than aesthetics. She began the engine start sequence, listening to the distinctive whine of the twin turbofan engines spinning up to operating speed. The sound was music to her ears. "Hog 2-1, this is ground control. You're cleared to taxi runway 27 for departure." The voice crackled through her headset, bringing her attention back to the immediate task. "Ground control, Hog 2-1 copies. Taxi runway 27. Sarah released the parking brake and began moving toward the active runway. Her wingman, Captain Mike Torres in Hog 2-2, fell into formation beside her. Torres had been flying A-10s for 6 years and was considered one of the best pilots in their squadron. He and Sarah had developed an excellent working relationship during their deployment, and she trusted his judgment completely. Together, they made a formidable team in the challenging environment of close air support operations. The takeoff was routine, and soon both A-10s were climbing toward their assigned altitude of 15,000 feet. The morning air was smooth, and visibility was excellent across the mountainous terrain of eastern Afghanistan. Sarah could see the snow-capped peaks stretching toward the horizon, a reminder of the harsh beauty of this ancient land. "Hog flight, contact Kandahar control on frequency 254.75, came the instruction from the departure controller. "Kandahar control, Hog 2-1 flight of 2, level at flight level 150, squawking 4207, Sarah transmitted as they reached their cruising altitude. "Hog 2-1 flight, radar contact. Proceed direct to checkpoint Alpha and contact tactical air control on frequency 236.25 for further instructions." The flight to checkpoint Alpha took 45 minutes, during which Sarah reviewed her mission materials and coordinated with Torres about their plan tactics. The special operations team they were supporting was known by the callsign Viper 6, and they would be operating in an area known for heavy Taliban activity. Hog 2-1, this is Viper 6, came a voice over the tactical frequency as they approached their assigned area. We have eyes on the target area. Multiple vehicles and personnel observed in the village approximately 2 clicks north of our position. Request you begin reconnaissance of the area. Viper 6, Hog 2-1 copies. Beginning reconnaissance run now. Sarah banked her A-10 into a wide orbit around the suspected enemy position. Through her targeting pod, she could see several pickup trucks and groups of armed men moving between buildings in the small village. The situation developed slowly over the next 2 hours. The special operations team maintained their concealed position while Sarah and Torres provided continuous surveillance of the enemy forces. Intelligence reports suggested that a high-value target might be present in the village, but positive identification had not yet been made. Hogflight, we have additional forces moving into your area, warned the airborne controller. 2 F-16s are being diverted to provide additional support. Callsign Viper 1-1 and 1-2 will be on station in approximately 20 minutes. Sarah acknowledged the transmission but felt a familiar tension. F-16 pilots often arrived in a combat area with their own ideas about how missions should be conducted. Their high-speed, high-altitude perspective sometimes conflicted with the methodical, low-altitude approach that A-10 pilots used for close air support. When the F-16s arrived on station, their flight leader immediately began asking detailed questions about the tactical situation. Sarah provided a comprehensive briefing, explaining the location of friendly forces, suspected enemy positions, and the rules of engagement for the mission. Hog 2-1, this is Viper 1-1, came the voice of the F-16 flight leader. We'll take the lead on this engagement. Suggest you move to a higher altitude to avoid conflicting with our attack runs. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. The suggestion was both unnecessary and potentially dangerous. A-10s were specifically designed for the low-altitude environment where they could provide precise, controlled fires in close proximity to friendly forces. Moving to a higher altitude would reduce their effectiveness and potentially endanger the special operations team below. Viper 1-1, Hog 2-1. Negative on altitude change. We are configured and positioned for optimal close air support. Our altitude provides the best perspective for this type of engagement. Sarah's voice remained professional, but her tone carried a clear message that she disagreed with the suggestion. Hog 2-1, I've been flying combat missions for 8 years. Trust me when I say that altitude provides safety and better situational awareness. The F-16 pilot's response carried an edge of condescension that did not go unnoticed. Before Sarah could respond, the situation on the ground changed dramatically. All aircraft, this is Viper 6. We are taking effective enemy fire from multiple positions. Request immediate close air support, danger close. Friendly forces are marked with red smoke. Sarah immediately pushed her A-10 into a steep dive toward the enemy positions. This was exactly the scenario that her aircraft was designed for, and her training took over completely. She could see the red smoke marking the friendly position and identified muzzle flashes from enemy weapons approximately 200 meters away. Viper 6, Hog 2-1 has visual on red smoke and enemy positions. Confirm you want fires 200 meters north of your position. Hog 2-1, that's affirmative. Enemy forces in the tree lean north of our position. Clear to engage. Sarah lined up her attack run with practiced precision. The A-10's cannon was incredibly accurate, and she could place rounds exactly where they were needed without endangering the special operations team. Her finger moved to the trigger as she acquired the target in her sight. Hog 2-1 is in hot, she transmitted, indicating that she was beginning her attack run. The GAU-8 cannon erupted with its distinctive sound, sending a stream of 30mm armor-piercing rounds into the enemy position. Sarah could see the impacts walking across the target area, effectively suppressing the enemy fire that had been threatening the ground forces. Hog 2-1, good hits on target, confirmed Viper 6. Enemy fire has ceased from that position. We are moving to extract. As Sarah pulled up from her attack run, she noticed that the F-16s had remained at their higher altitude throughout the engagement. This was standard procedure for their aircraft, but it highlighted the fundamental difference between the two missions. F-16s were air superiority fighters, while A-10s were built specifically for close air support. "Nice work, Hog Flight," acknowledged Viper 11 over the radio. "That was some precise shooting down there." The compliment felt genuine, and Sarah appreciated the recognition from her fellow pilots. Professional respect was earned through competent performance, not through aircraft type or mission profile. As the immediate threat subsided, the Special Operations Team began their extraction while Sarah and Torres maintained overwatch. The intelligence they had gathered would be valuable for future operations, and the successful engagement had prevented enemy forces from consolidating in the area. Hog 2-1, this is Kandahar Control. You are cleared to return to base when mission is complete. Kandahar Control, Hog 2-1 copies. Mission complete, returning to base. Sarah began a gentle climb toward their cruising altitude for the return flight to Bagram. The flight home was quiet, giving Sarah time to reflect on the mission. The coordination with the F-16s had gone smoothly once the shooting started, but she could not shake the feeling that there was still a fundamental misunderstanding between the fighter and attack communities about their respective roles. Landing back at Bagram, Sarah shut down her engines and began the post-flight inspection of her aircraft. Rodriguez was waiting with his maintenance team, ready to service the A-10 for the next mission. The routine of post-flight procedures helped her transition from the intensity of combat back to the daily life of the airbase. "How did she perform today, Captain?" Rodriguez asked as he began documenting the aircraft's condition. "Like a champ, as always," Sarah replied. "She earned her keep today." She signed the maintenance forms and gathered her flight gear, ready to head to the debriefing room where she would provide a detailed account of the mission to intelligence officers. The debriefing process was thorough, covering every aspect of the engagement from initial contact to final extraction. Sarah's detailed observations would be incorporated into intelligence reports and used to plan future operations in the area. This was another crucial aspect of her job that often went unrecognized outside the military aviation community. As she walked back to her quarters that evening, Sarah encountered Captain Jennifer Hawk Morrison, one of the F-16 pilots who had been scheduled to fly later that day. Morrison was known throughout the wing as an exceptional pilot and a rising star in the fighter community. "I heard you guys had some action today," Morrison said, falling into step beside Sarah. "How did the coordination with our guys go?" "It went fine once we got into the fight," Sarah replied honestly. "Your flight leader initially suggested we climb to a higher altitude, but we worked it out." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "That's pretty standard for our tactics, but I can see how it might not work for your mission profile. We operate differently up high." The conversation was casual, but Sarah detected a genuine interest in understanding the differences between their respective roles. It was refreshing to talk with someone who seemed genuinely curious rather than dismissive about A-10 operations. "The thing is," Sarah continued, "we're designed to work close to the ground where we can see exactly what we're shooting at. When friendly forces are 200 meters away from enemy positions, precision matters more than speed." "That makes sense," Morrison agreed. "I've never really thought about it from that perspective. Our training focuses on speed and altitude as survival tools." As they reached the officers' quarters, Sarah found herself wondering if better communication between the different pilot communities might improve their effectiveness in joint operations. Each aircraft type had its strengths and limitations, and understanding those differences could lead to better tactical coordination. That night, as Sarah lay in her narrow bunk listening to the distant sounds of the airbase, she thought about the mission and the conversations with her fellow pilots. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another opportunity to support ground forces and demonstrate the unique capabilities of her aircraft. The A-10 might not be the fastest or most glamorous aircraft in the inventory, but Sarah knew that when soldiers on the ground needed close air support, there was no substitute for the Warthog's combination of precision, firepower, and survivability. That knowledge gave her a quiet confidence that no amount of casual mockery could diminish. Outside her window, she could hear the distinctive sound of F-16s taking off for a night mission. The different aircraft sounds reminded her of the complex symphony of military aviation, where each platform played its own crucial role in the larger mission of protecting American interests and supporting Allied forces around the world. As sleep finally came, Sarah's last conscious thought was about the next day's scheduled mission. Intelligence reports suggested increased enemy activity in a different sector, and her squadron would once again be called upon to provide the precise, controlled firepower that had become their trademark in the challenging environment of Afghanistan. 3 weeks later, Captain Sarah Chen found herself preparing for what would become the most challenging mission of her deployment. The intelligence briefing that morning had been sobering. A forward operating base in the remote Kunar province was under siege by a large Taliban force, and multiple aircraft were being scrambled to provide support. The weather had deteriorated significantly overnight, with low clouds and intermittent rain showers reducing visibility throughout the region. These conditions favored the A-10's capabilities, as the aircraft was designed to operate effectively in poor weather conditions that would ground many other platforms. Chen, Yu and Torres are going to be primary on this one, announced Lieutenant Colonel David Palmer, their squadron commander. Palmer was a veteran A-10 pilot with over 3,000 combat hours, and his calm demeanor in the briefing room helped steady the younger pilot's nerves. The situation at FOB Chapman is critical, Palmer continued, pointing to a map display on the wall. They've been under coordinated attack since 0300 hours. Multiple casualty reports, and their perimeter has been breached in 2 locations. Army Rangers are holding the line, but they need immediate close air support. Sarah studied the map carefully, noting the terrain features and potential approach routes to the target area. The forward operating base was situated in a narrow valley surrounded by steep mountains, which would limit their tactical options during the engagement. Weather reports indicated cloud ceilings as low as 800 feet in some areas, well below the minimum altitude for most precision munitions. "What's the air picture looking like?" asked Captain Torres from his seat beside Sarah. His question addressed one of the most critical factors in mission planning, the coordination of multiple aircraft operating in the same airspace. "We'll have F-16s on station for air superiority, but the weather is keeping them above the cloud deck," Palmer explained. "Apache helicopters are trying to get in, but they're having trouble with the visibility. You two are going to be the primary close air support platform." This meant that Sarah and Torres would be operating largely on their own in the target area, without the backup that multiple aircraft types usually provided. The responsibility was significant, but it also highlighted the unique capabilities that made the A-10 irreplaceable in certain combat scenarios. After the briefing, Sarah spent an additional hour studying intelligence reports and reconnaissance photos of the area around FOB Chapman. The base housed approximately 200 Army Rangers and Special Operations personnel, along with supporting elements. If the Taliban succeeded in overrunning the position, the consequences would be catastrophic. The pre-flight preparation took on additional urgency given the critical nature of the mission. Rodriguez and his maintenance team had worked through the night to ensure both A-10s were in perfect mechanical condition. Extra ammunition had been loaded for the GAU-8 cannon, and the external pylons carried a full load of precision munitions. "This is the big one, Captain," Rodriguez said as he handed Sarah the maintenance logbook. "Everything's green across the board. She's ready to earn her pay today." Sarah noticed that several other crew chiefs had gathered around their aircraft, an unusual occurrence that spoke to the seriousness of the situation. These experienced maintainers understood the critical nature of the mission and wanted to personally ensure that their pilots had the best possible equipment. The taxi and takeoff were routine, but Sarah could feel the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders as they climbed through the overcast sky. The weather briefing had been accurate. They encountered solid clouds beginning at 1,200 feet and continuing up to nearly 8,000 feet. Above the clouds, the sky was clear, but their mission would take place entirely in the weather. "Hog 2-1 flight, contact Bagram approach on frequency 128.35, instructed the departure controller. "Bagram approach, Hog 2-1 flight of 2, climbing through flight level 060 for flight level 120, Sarah transmitted as they continued their ascent. "Hog 2-1 flight, radar contact. Be advised, weather is IFR conditions throughout your route of flight. Latest reports from Chapman show ceilings variable between 500 and 1,000 feet with moderate precipitation." The weather report confirmed what Sarah had expected. They would be operating in instrument flight conditions for most of the mission, relying heavily on their navigation systems and radar to maintain situational awareness. These were exactly the conditions that separated experienced combat pilots from novices. As they approached the target area, Sarah began coordination with the tactical air controller supporting FOB Chapman. The radio communications painted a grim picture of the situation on the ground. "Hog 2-1, this is Guardian 1-6. Friendlies are in a defensive perimeter around the main base buildings. Enemy forces have established positions in the tree line approximately 300 to 500 meters north and east of the base. We have wounded that need immediate evacuation, but the landing zone is under direct fire." Guardian 1-6, Hog 2-1 copies. "We're approximately 10 minutes out from your position. Can you mark friendly positions with smoke or other visual references?" Hog 2-1, negative on smoke. Weather is too low, and visibility is less than half a mile. We'll need to rely on grid coordinates and target talk-on for all engagements. This added another layer of complexity to an already challenging mission. Without visual references, Sarah would have to rely entirely on precise navigation and detailed communication with the ground forces to avoid fratricide while engaging enemy positions. The margin for error was virtually non-existent. Hogflight, be advised we have F-16s operating above the weather at flight level 200, transmitted the airborne controller. Callsigns Viper 1-1 and 1-2 are available for coordination if needed. Sarah acknowledged the transmission but knew that the F-16s would be of limited use in the current weather conditions. Their high-altitude tactics were ineffective when friendly and enemy forces were separated by only a few hundred meters and visibility was severely restricted. Descending through the clouds toward FOB Chapman, Sarah transitioned from instrument flight to visual flight rules as they broke through the overcast at approximately 700 feet above ground level. The sight that greeted them was sobering. Smoke was rising from several locations within the base perimeter, and she could see muzzle flashes from weapons fire in the surrounding treeline. Guardian 1-6, Hog 2-1 has visual on the base. I can see smoke from multiple locations and active firing positions in the treeline to the north. Hog 2-1, that's affirmative. Our most critical need is suppression of enemy positions. Grid 1479568. Enemy machine gun position there is preventing our medical evacuation. Sarah input the grid coordinates into her targeting system and identified the location relative to the base perimeter. The enemy position was approximately 400 meters northeast of the main buildings, situated in a small cluster of trees that provided excellent cover and concealment. Guardian 1-6, I have the grid location. Confirm friendlies are south and west of that position, minimum safe distance 300 meters. That's affirmative, Hog 2-1. Friendlies are well clear to the south and west. You are cleared to engage. Sarah maneuvered her A-10 into an attack position, using the low altitude and poor visibility to mask her approach from the enemy forces. The GAU-8 cannon was the perfect weapon for this scenario, providing precise fire that could be controlled to avoid endangering friendly forces. Hog 2-1 is in hot, she transmitted, beginning her attack run. The 30mm cannon rounds impacted exactly where they were intended, walking across the enemy position with devastating effect. Sarah could see secondary explosions from ammunition and equipment being destroyed, and the machine gun fire that had been suppressing the landing zone ceased immediately. Hog 2-1, direct hits on target. Enemy fire has stopped from that position. Medical evacuation is inbound to the landing zone now. As Sarah pulled up from her attack run, she noticed that Torres had identified another enemy position and was beginning his own engagement. The coordination between the two A-10 pilots was seamless, developed through months of flying together in combat conditions. Hog 2-2 is engaging enemy position. Grid 147962881. Multiple personnel with small arms approximately 500 meters east of the base. Torres's attack was equally effective, suppressing another group of Taliban fighters who had been preparing to assault the base perimeter. The combination of precise cannon fire and the psychological effect of the A-10's distinctive sound was breaking up the coordinated enemy attack. All hog flights, this is Viper 1-1, came a transmission from one of the F-16s operating above the weather. We're monitoring your frequency. Excellent work down there. Is there anything we can do to assist? Sarah appreciated the offer, but the current tactical situation required the low-altitude, precise fires that only the A-10 could provide. Viper 1-1, Hog 2-1. Negative assistance required at this time. Weather is keeping you out of the fight, but we've got it handled down here. The next 2 hours were a continuous cycle of target identification, coordination with ground forces, and precision attacks on enemy positions. Sarah and Torres methodically eliminated threats around the perimeter of FOB Chapman, allowing Army Rangers to regain control of breached positions and evacuate wounded personnel. The weather continued to deteriorate as the morning progressed, with visibility dropping to less than a quarter mile in some areas. These conditions would have grounded most aircraft, but the A-10's design characteristics allowed it to continue operating effectively at low altitude. Guardian 1-6, Hog 2-1. We're approaching minimum fuel for continued station time. What's your current tactical situation? Hog 2-1, the immediate threat has been neutralized. We've re-established our perimeter and completed medical evacuation of all casualties. Your fires were critical to our success here. Sarah felt a profound sense of satisfaction at the ground commander's assessment. This was exactly why she had chosen to fly A-10s, the ability to provide decisive support to ground forces in their most critical moments. No other aircraft in the Air Force inventory could have accomplished this mission under these conditions. Guardian 16, Hog 21 copies. We'll remain on station for another 15 minutes, then return to base for fuel and rearmament. As they climbed back through the clouds toward their cruising altitude, Sarah reflected on the morning's events. The mission had showcased everything that made the A-10 unique: the ability to operate in adverse weather, provide precise fires in close proximity to friendly forces, and remain on station for extended periods, providing continuous support. "Nice work down there, Sarah," Torres transmitted over their private frequency. "That was some of the best shooting I've ever seen." The compliment meant a great deal coming from Torres, who was himself considered one of the finest A-10 pilots in their squadron. The mission had demanded everything they had learned about close air support, and they had delivered exactly what the ground forces needed. During the flight back to Bagram, Sarah monitored the tactical frequencies and learned that FOB Chapman had successfully repelled the Taliban attack. Casualty reports were lighter than initially feared, largely because the effective close air support had prevented enemy forces from consolidating their assault on the base perimeter. Hog 21 flight, contact Bagram approach on frequency 119.1, instructed the regional controller as they approached their home base. Bagram approach, Hog 21 flight of 2, flight level 120, requesting approach and landing. Hog 21 flight, cleared for approach runway 09. Weather is currently overcast at 1,500 feet, visibility 3 miles in light rain. The landing at Bagram was routine, but Sarah noticed that word of their mission had already reached the base. Several ground crews and other pilots had gathered near their parking area, an unusual occurrence that suggested their morning's work had generated significant attention. Rodriguez met them with his maintenance team, but his usual professional demeanor was replaced by obvious pride in what his aircraft had accomplished. "How did she do today, Captain?" "Perfect, as always," Sarah replied, handing him the logbook. "She saved a lot of lives this morning." As Sarah completed her post-flight procedures, she was approached by Colonel Michael Harrison, the wing commander. Harrison was a veteran F-16 pilot who rarely interacted directly with individual pilots unless something significant had occurred. "Captain Chan, I wanted to personally thank you and Captain Torres for your work this morning," Harrison said. "The ground commander at Chapman specifically requested that I pass along his appreciation for your performance under extremely challenging conditions." The recognition from the wing commander was unexpected and deeply appreciated. Sarah understood that word of their mission had reached the highest levels of command, which spoke to the critical importance of what they had accomplished. "Thank you, sir. We were just doing our job," Sarah responded, but she could not hide the pride in her voice. "I know you were," Harrison replied. "But doing your job exceptionally well in combat is what separates good pilots from great ones. The Army Rangers at Chapman are going home to their families tonight because of your skill and professionalism." As Colonel Harrison walked away, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose in her chosen profession. Flying combat missions was never routine, but days like this reminded her why she had dedicated her life to mastering the art of close air support. The afternoon brought additional recognition when Captain Morrison, the F-16 pilot she had spoken with weeks earlier, approached her in the squadron-ready room. "I heard about your mission this morning," Morrison said. "The F-16 guys were monitoring your frequency from above the weather. I have to admit, we were impressed by what you accomplished down there." "Thanks, Jennifer," Sarah replied, using Morrison's first name for the first time. "It's what we train for." "I know, but there's training and then there's performing under pressure when lives are on the line," Morrison continued. "What you did today couldn't have been accomplished by any other aircraft. We all learned something about the unique capabilities of the A-10. The conversation represented a shift in how Sarah was viewed by her peers in the fighter community. Mutual respect between pilot communities was earned through demonstrated competence, and her performance at FOB Chapman had clearly made an impression on pilots throughout the wing. That evening, Sarah sat in her quarters writing a letter to her parents back in California. She wanted to share her experiences without revealing classified details, focusing instead on the satisfaction that came from knowing her skills had made a difference in the lives of fellow service members. The letter described the challenging weather conditions and the complex coordination required for successful close air support missions. She wrote about the pride she felt in flying an aircraft that was specifically designed to support ground forces, and how that mission alignment gave her work a clear sense of purpose. As she sealed the envelope, Sarah thought about tomorrow's scheduled mission. Intelligence reports suggested that Taliban forces were regrouping in another sector, and her squadron would once again be called upon to provide the precise, controlled firepower that had become their signature in Afghanistan. The A-10 might face an uncertain future in an air force increasingly focused on high-tech fighter aircraft, but missions like FOB Chapman demonstrated that there remained a critical need for platforms designed specifically for close air support. Sarah was proud to be part of that legacy and determined to continue proving the aircraft's value through her own professional performance. 2 months after the successful mission at FOB Chapman, Captain Sarah Chan received orders that would change everything. She was being transferred to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada to participate in a classified program involving advanced A-10 upgrades and tactics development. The assignment was considered a significant career advancement, but it also meant leaving behind the combat environment where she had proven herself. The final weeks of her deployment passed quickly, filled with the routine of combat missions and the gradual transition of responsibilities to incoming pilots. Sarah had accumulated over 400 combat hours in Afghanistan, making her one of the most experienced A-10 pilots in her squadron. Her replacement was a young lieutenant fresh from training, and Sarah spent considerable time mentoring him in the realities of combat flying. The most important thing to remember, Sarah explained during a training flight over the Afghan mountains, is that we're not here to look impressive. We're here to support the guys on the ground who are counting on us to be precise and reliable when everything goes wrong. Lieutenant Mark Stevens nodded seriously from the cockpit of the other A-10. Stevens was technically proficient but lacked the confidence that came from experience in actual combat situations. Sarah remembered feeling the same uncertainty during her first deployment and was determined to give him every advantage possible. The flight back to the United States was bittersweet. Sarah felt pride in what she had accomplished during her deployment, but she also knew she would miss the clear sense of purpose that came with combat flying. The missions at Nellis would be important for the future of the A-10 program, but they would lack the immediate life-or-death significance of supporting ground forces in contact. Nellis Air Force Base was dramatically different from the austere environment of Afghanistan. The Nevada desert landscape was harsh but beautiful, and the facilities were state-of-the-art compared to the temporary structures she had become accustomed to overseas. The 422nd Test and Evaluation Squadron occupied a modern complex specifically designed for aircraft testing and tactics development. "Welcome to the Weapons School, Captain Chen," greeted Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Williams, the squadron commander. Williams was a legend in the A-10 community, with over 3,000 flight hours in the aircraft and combat experience spanning multiple conflicts. Her reputation for excellence was matched only by her dedication to advancing close air support tactics. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm excited to be here," Sarah replied, though she was still adjusting to being back in the United States after months in a combat zone. "Your record from Afghanistan is exactly what we need for this program," Williams continued, leading Sarah through the squadron headquarters. "We're developing new tactics and testing upgraded systems for the A-10. Your combat experience will be invaluable in determining what actually works versus what looks good on paper." The briefing room walls were covered with technical diagrams and photographs of various A-10 configurations. Sarah could see aircraft fitted with new sensors, communication systems, and weapons that she had never seen before. The scope of the modernization program was far more extensive than she had imagined. "The Air Force is under pressure to justify keeping the A-10 in the inventory," Williams explained. "Some people think newer, multi-role fighters can do everything we do, just faster and higher. Our job is to prove that close air support requires specialized capabilities that can't be replicated by other platforms." Sarah understood immediately. The political and budgetary pressures facing military aviation were forcing every platform to justify its existence. The A-10 community had to demonstrate unique capabilities that made their aircraft irreplaceable, not just useful. Her first assignment was to work with a team of engineers testing new precision targeting systems. The upgraded pods provided significantly enhanced imagery and target designation capabilities, but they needed to be evaluated by experienced combat pilots to determine their real-world effectiveness. "The resolution is incredible," explained Dr. Michael Foster, the lead engineer on the targeting system project. "You can identify individual personnel from altitudes and ranges that were impossible with previous systems." Sarah studied the display screens showing imagery from the test flights conducted the previous week. The clarity was indeed remarkable, but she was more interested in how the systems would perform under the stress and time constraints of actual combat situations. How does it handle weather degradation and target movement, she asked. These were the factors that often determine success or failure in real-world engagements, not laboratory specifications. That's exactly what we need you to help us determine, Dr. Foster replied. Your combat experience will help us identify practical limitations that we might not discover through conventional testing. The flight testing program was intensive, requiring Sarah to learn new systems while maintaining her proficiency in standard A-10 operations. Each test flight generated extensive data that was analyzed by teams of engineers and tactics specialists. The work was intellectually challenging and professionally rewarding, even if it lacked the immediate intensity of combat missions. During her third week at Nellis, Sarah was assigned to participate in a joint training exercise involving multiple aircraft types. The scenario was designed to simulate a complex battlefield where A-10s, F-16s, and Army helicopters would need to coordinate their efforts to support ground forces. The exercise took place over the vast training ranges of southern Nevada, where realistic threat simulations could be conducted without endangering civilian populations. Sarah found herself working with many of the same F-16 pilots she had encountered in Afghanistan, including Captain Jennifer Morrison. "It's good to see you again, Sarah," Morrison said during the pre-flight briefing. "I heard you're working on some interesting projects here." "I can't talk about most of it," Sarah replied with a smile, "but it's definitely keeping me busy." "How are things back in the real world?" "Different perspective now after working with you guys overseas," Morrison admitted. "I have a lot more respect for what A-10 pilots do. The precision required for danger-close situations is something we never really trained for in the F-16 community." The exercise scenario involved a simulated enemy force that had captured a strategic valley and was threatening Allied ground forces. The F-16s would establish air superiority and suppress enemy air defenses, while the A-10s provided close air support for the advancing friendly forces. Army helicopters would conduct reconnaissance and transport special operations teams. "Remember that this is about integration, not competition," emphasized the exercise director during the mass briefing. "Each platform has unique capabilities, and success depends on how well we coordinate those capabilities." Sarah appreciated the emphasis on cooperation rather than rivalry. Her experience in Afghanistan had taught her that successful missions required each aircraft type to play to its strengths rather than trying to accomplish tasks better suited for other platforms. The first day of the exercise highlighted the complexity of multi-aircraft coordination. Radio frequency management alone was challenging, with multiple flights operating on different networks while trying to maintain overall situational awareness. Sarah found herself serving as a liaison between the ground forces and the higher altitude aircraft that could not communicate directly with troops on the ground. "Hog 2-1, this is Striker 6, transmitted the ground force commander. We need immediate suppression of enemy positions grid 7A493215. Friendlies are advancing from the south and need covering fire." Striker 6, Hog 2-1 copies. "I have the grid location and will coordinate with higher assets for additional support." Sarah simultaneously transmitted on a different frequency to update the F-16 flight leader about the developing tactical situation. The coordination worked smoothly, with each aircraft type contributing its unique capabilities to the overall mission. F-16 suppressed enemy air defense systems that threatened the slower A-10s, while the Warthogs provided the precise fires needed for close support of advancing ground forces. "This is working better than I expected," Morrison transmitted on their coordination frequency after a particularly successful engagement. "Your aircraft really shines when we set up the conditions properly." "Same for yours," Sarah replied. "Having air superiority and defense suppression makes our job much safer and more effective." The exercise continued for 5 days, with scenarios of increasing complexity that tested the limits of inter-service and inter-platform coordination. Sarah's performance was consistently outstanding, earning recognition from exercise controllers and fellow pilots alike. On the final day, an unexpected development occurred that would have significant implications for Sarah's future. During the post-exercise debrief, Colonel Williams announced that Sarah had been selected for a highly classified program involving international cooperation and advanced tactics development. "Captain Chen, your performance during this exercise has confirmed our assessment of your capabilities," Williams announced. "You're being assigned to a special project that I can't discuss in detail here, but it involves working with Allied air forces on joint close air support doctrine." The assignment was both exciting and mysterious. Sarah understood that her combat experience and demonstrated leadership abilities had opened doors that might not have been available to other pilots. The opportunity to influence international doctrine for close air support was a responsibility she took seriously. "When do I start, ma'am?" Sarah asked, already beginning to think about what such an assignment might involve. Immediately, Williams replied. "You'll be briefed tomorrow morning on the specific details, but I can tell you that it involves travel to several allied nations and extensive coordination with foreign air forces." That evening, Sarah called her parents to update them on her assignment, though she could only provide general details about her work at Nellis. The conversation reminded her how much her life had changed since joining the Air Force and choosing to fly A-10s. "Are you happy with your career choice?" her mother asked during the call. It was a question that came up regularly, reflecting her parents' concern about the demands and dangers of military aviation. "More than ever," Sarah replied honestly. "I feel like I'm making a real difference, not just for the Air Force but for the people we're trying to protect. The work here is preparing us to be even more effective in future conflicts." The next morning's briefing exceeded Sarah's expectations for both scope and significance. The classified program involved developing new international standards for close air support in coalition operations. Her role would be to serve as the primary A-10 representative in a multinational team of pilots and tactics experts. "The reality of modern warfare is that we rarely fight alone," explained Colonel James Mitchell, the program director. "Our allies operate different aircraft with different capabilities, and we need common procedures that allow us to work together effectively." The briefing materials included detailed analyses of close air support operations conducted by various Allied air forces. Sarah could see significant differences in tactics, procedures, and equipment that could potentially cause problems during joint operations. "Your first assignment is a month-long exchange with the Royal Air Force," Colonel Mitchell continued. "You'll be working with their close air support experts to identify best practices and develop common procedures." The opportunity to work with the RAF was particularly exciting for Sarah. The British had extensive experience with close air support operations, and their perspective would be valuable for developing truly effective joint procedures. After that, you'll spend time with other Allied air forces, including the Canadians, Australians, and, potentially some NATO partners. The goal is to develop a comprehensive doctrine that preserves each nation's unique capabilities while enabling seamless cooperation. As Sarah left the briefing, she reflected on the trajectory of her career. From a young pilot struggling to prove herself in a male-dominated profession, she had become a combat-experienced aviator selected for some of the Air Force's most important developmental programs. The assignment also represented validation of her chosen aircraft and mission. The fact that the A-10 was central to international close air support doctrine development demonstrated that the platform remained relevant and valuable despite budgetary pressures and technological changes. That afternoon, Sarah spent time in the squadron simulator, practicing the advanced procedures she had learned during her time at Nellis. The technology was impressive, providing realistic training scenarios that closely approximated actual combat conditions. "The simulator work is important," explained Major Robert Hayes, one of her instructors, "but remember that real combat will always present situations that can't be replicated in training. Your judgment and experience will be more valuable than any checklist." The comment resonated with Sarah because it reflected her own philosophy about flying. Technical proficiency was essential, but the ability to adapt to unexpected situations was what separated good pilots from exceptional ones. As her time at Nellis drew to a close before departing for England, Sarah found herself thinking about the broader implications of her work. The A-10 community was at a critical juncture, needing to demonstrate continued relevance while adapting to changing technological and strategic realities. Her assignment to the International Doctrine Development Program represented an opportunity to shape the future of close air support on a global scale. The responsibility was significant, but Sarah felt confident that her combat experience and technical knowledge had prepared her for the challenge. The final week at Nellis included intensive briefings on British military culture and RAF procedures. Sarah was determined to make the most of the exchange program, recognizing that the relationships she built and lessons she learned would influence close air support doctrine for years to come. 6 months into her assignment with the International Doctrine Development Program, Captain Sarah Chen found herself back at Nellis Air Force Base for what would become the most significant mission of her career. The call came during a routine briefing session about coalition close air support procedures. "Captain Chen, report to Colonel Mitchell's office immediately," announced her aide. The urgency in his voice suggested something unusual was developing. Sarah made her way quickly to the program director's office, wondering what could require such immediate attention. Her exchange programs with the Royal Air Force and Canadian Air Force had been proceeding smoothly, with excellent progress on joint doctrine development. "Sarah, we have a situation," Colonel Mitchell began without preamble. "There's been an incident involving an F-16 over the Pacific. The pilot is down, and rescue operations are being complicated by weather and enemy activity in the area." The briefing that followed revealed a complex scenario. Major Jennifer Morrison, the F-16 pilot Sarah had worked with extensively during exercises, had been conducting a routine patrol mission when her aircraft experienced catastrophic engine failure. She had successfully ejected but landed in hostile territory where Taliban-affiliated forces were known to operate. The rescue mission requires an aircraft that can operate in marginal weather conditions and provide close air support for the rescue team, Mitchell continued. Every F-16 and F-35 in the region is grounded due to the weather conditions. We need an A-10 pilot with extensive combat experience and knowledge of rescue procedures. Sarah understood immediately why she had been selected. The A-10's ability to operate in adverse weather and provide precise close air support made it ideally suited for combat rescue missions. Her combat experience in Afghanistan and recent training in advanced tactics made her the logical choice. "When do we launch?" Sarah asked, already mentally preparing for the mission. "Aircraft is being prepared now. You'll launch in 2 hours with a full rescue package. This is a live mission, Captain. Major Morrison's survival depends on our ability to get her out of there quickly." The next 90 minutes were a blur of mission planning and preparation. Sarah studied reconnaissance photos of the area where Morrison had landed, noting terrain features and potential threats. The weather reports confirmed marginal conditions with low clouds and intermittent precipitation. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had volunteered to deploy with the rescue mission to serve as Sarah's dedicated crew chief. His presence provided additional confidence in the aircraft's reliability during what promised to be a challenging operation. "She's configured for extended range and maximum firepower," Rodriguez reported as Sarah completed her pre-flight inspection. "Extra fuel tanks, full ammunition load for the cannon, and a mixed ordnance load for different target types." The A-10 looked exactly like what it was, a purpose-built machine for close air support and combat rescue operations. Sarah felt the familiar surge of confidence that came from flying an aircraft specifically designed for her mission. The takeoff from Nellis was routine, but Sarah knew that everything would become more challenging as they approached the target area. Weather reports indicated deteriorating conditions with cloud ceilings as low as 300 feet in some areas. "Rescue 1-1, this is Control. Latest intelligence shows enemy forces converging on the crash site. Estimated time before they reach Major Morrison's position is approximately 90 minutes. The transmission added urgency to an already time-critical mission. Sarah pushed her A-10 to maximum cruise speed while conserving fuel for the extended loitering time that would be required once they reached the target area. Rescue 1-1, contact Tactical Control on frequency 247.75 for coordination with the rescue team, came the instruction as they approached the operational area. Tactical Control, Rescue 1-1 on station. Request sitrep and coordination with ground elements. Rescue 1-1, we have a pararescue team inserting approximately 2 miles south of the crash site. They will move overland to Major Morrison's position while you provide overwatch and close air support as needed. The pararescue team, known as PJs, were among the most highly trained personnel in the military. Their motto, "that others may live," reflected their dedication to rescuing downed aircrews under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. Sarah established orbit around the general area while maintaining communications with both the rescue team and Morrison herself. The F-16 pilot had successfully evaded capture for several hours but reported hearing voices and movement in the surrounding area. Rescue 1-1, this is Viper 27, came Morrison's voice over the emergency frequency. "I can hear vehicles approaching from the north. Request immediate assistance." Viper 27, Rescue 1-1 has your position. "I'm coordinating with the rescue team and will provide support as needed. Stay concealed and maintain radio discipline." Sarah could hear the stress in Morrison's voice but was impressed by her composure under extremely dangerous circumstances. Survival training was one thing, but facing capture by hostile forces while injured tested every pilot's mental resilience. The weather continued to deteriorate as the mission progressed. Sarah found herself operating at altitudes between 200 and 500 feet above ground level, using the A-10's exceptional low-altitude handling characteristics to maintain visual contact with the ground while avoiding the worst of the clouds. Rescue 1-1, this is Guardian 2-3, transmitted the pararescue team leader. We have visual contact with enemy forces approximately 800 meters north of the crash site. Count 6 vehicles with multiple personnel. They appear to be conducting an organized search. Guardian 2-3, Rescue 1-1 copies. I have visual on the vehicles. Can you mark your position for deconfliction? Rescue 1-1, were marked with infrared strobes visible on night vision. Friendlies are south and west of the crash site, moving north toward the survivor. Sarah activated her night vision systems and immediately identified the infrared markers indicating the rescue team's position. The enemy vehicles were clearly visible through her targeting pod, and she could see armed personnel dismounting to begin a systematic search of the area. Guardian 2-3, Rescue 1-1 is prepared to engage enemy forces on your command. Recommend you expedite movement to the survivor. Rescue 1-1, we're moving as fast as possible through this terrain. Enemy forces are approximately 10 minutes from the survivor's position. Request you delay their advance. This was exactly the scenario that the A-10 was designed for, providing precise, controlled fires to support friendly forces operating in close proximity to enemy threats. Sarah maneuvered into attack position while maintaining careful awareness of the rescue team's location. Guardian 2-3, Rescue 1-1 is engaging enemy vehicles now. Danger close fires, confirm your position is south and west of target area. Rescue 1-1, Guardian 2-3 confirms friendly south and west. You are cleared hot. Sarah lined up her first attack run on the lead enemy vehicle, using the GAU-8 cannon to provide devastating but precise fires. The 30mm rounds impacted exactly where intended, destroying the vehicle and eliminating the immediate threat to Morrison's position. Rescue 1-1, excellent hits on target. Enemy forces are scattering and taking cover. This should buy us the time we need to reach the survivor. The psychological effect of the A-10's attack was as important as the physical destruction. Enemy forces who had been conducting an organized search were now focused on their own survival rather than hunting for the downed pilot. Sarah continued to provide covering fire for the rescue team as they moved toward Morrison's position. Each attack was carefully coordinated to suppress enemy forces while avoiding any risk to friendly personnel. The mission required every bit of skill she had developed during her combat tours. Viper 2-7, this is Guardian 2-3. We have reached your position. Prepare for extraction. Guardian 2-3, Viper 2-7 is ready. I can see you approaching from the south. Sarah felt a surge of relief as she listened to the radio traffic indicating that Morrison had been reached by the rescue team. The most dangerous phase of the mission was nearly complete, but they still needed to extract safely from the area. Rescue 1-1, this is Guardian 2-3. We have the package and are moving to extraction point Alpha. Estimate 15 minutes to reach the landing zone. Guardian 2-3, Rescue 1-1 copies. I'll provide overwatch during your movement to the extraction point. The extraction phase required Sarah to suppress any enemy forces that might threaten the rescue team during their movement to the helicopter landing zone. Several small groups of enemy personnel attempted to pursue the rescue team but were quickly discouraged by precise cannon fire from the A-10. All stations, this is Rescue 7-1, transmitted the helicopter pilot preparing to extract the team. I'm inbound to the landing zone. Request area sanitization before landing. Rescue 7-1, Rescue 1-1. Landing zone is clear of enemy forces. Weather is marginal with ceilings at 400 feet. Visibility approximately half a mile in light precipitation. The helicopter landing was conducted under extremely challenging conditions, but the crew executed it flawlessly. Sarah maintained overwatch throughout the extraction, ready to provide immediate fires if enemy forces threatened the operation. Guardian 2-3 is aboard with the package, transmitted the helicopter pilot. Departing the area now. Sarah felt profound satisfaction as she listened to the successful extraction being completed. Morrison was safe, and the rescue mission had been accomplished without casualties to the rescue team. Rescue 1-1, this is Control. Outstanding work. RTB when ready. The flight back to Nellis gave Sarah time to reflect on what had just occurred. The mission had demonstrated everything that made the A-10 irreplaceable: the ability to operate in adverse weather, provide precise close air support, and remain on station for extended periods. More importantly, it had proven the continuing relevance of specialized close air support aircraft in an era when multi-role fighters were being promoted as universal solutions. No F-16 or F-35 could have operated effectively in the weather conditions that had grounded every other tactical aircraft in the region. Landing at Nellis, Sarah was met by Colonel Mitchell and a crowd of squadron personnel who had monitored the mission. Rodriguez was among them, his face showing obvious pride in what his aircraft had accomplished. "How did she perform?" Rodriguez asked as Sarah completed her shutdown checklist. "Perfectly," Sarah replied. "She brought everyone home." The debriefing process was thorough, with every aspect of the mission analyzed for lessons learned and tactical improvements. Sarah's performance had been flawless, but she was more focused on the broader implications of what had occurred. "This mission proves what we've been saying all along," Colonel Mitchell observed during the debrief. "Close air support requires specialized capabilities that can't be replicated by multi-role platforms. When conditions are marginal and precision is critical, there's no substitute for the A-10. Later that evening, Sarah received a phone call from Morrison, who was recovering at a military hospital in Germany. The conversation was brief but emotional. "I can't thank you enough," Morrison said. "When I heard that distinctive sound of your engines, I knew everything was going to be okay." "We take care of each other," Sarah replied simply. "That's what we do." The rescue mission had significant implications beyond the immediate success of saving Morrison's life. Video footage of the A-10's performance under conditions that had grounded other aircraft became a powerful argument for maintaining the platform in the Air Force inventory. Senior Air Force leadership took notice of the mission results, and Sarah found herself briefing generals and congressional staffers about the unique capabilities that the A-10 brought to combat operations. Her personal story of development from a young pilot facing skepticism to a combat-proven aviator resonated with audiences who were making decisions about future aircraft procurement. "The A-10 isn't just an aircraft," Sarah explained during one such briefing. "It's a specialized tool designed for specific missions that other platforms simply cannot accomplish effectively. When soldiers or airmen are in trouble on the ground, they need an aircraft that was built specifically to help them." The tail number of Sarah's A-10 during the rescue mission was 78-0691, an aircraft with a distinguished combat history spanning multiple conflicts. The mission added another chapter to that history and became a symbol of what dedicated pilots could accomplish with the right equipment and training. 3 months later, Sarah was promoted to major and assigned as the A-10 representative to the Pentagon's Close Air Support Modernization Program. Her combat experience and demonstrated leadership had earned her a role in shaping the future of tactical aviation. The assignment represented both personal achievement and validation of her chosen aircraft. The A-10 community had proven once again that specialized capabilities remained relevant in modern warfare, and Sarah was proud to be part of that ongoing legacy. As she prepared to leave Nellis for her new assignment, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From facing skepticism about her abilities as a female pilot in a male-dominated field, to proving herself in combat, to rescuing a fellow aviator under impossible conditions, she had demonstrated that excellence was not determined by gender or aircraft type, but by dedication, skill, and the courage to perform when others' lives depended on her abilities. The A-10 would face continued challenges in an Air Force increasingly focused on stealth technology and multi-role platforms. But missions like the rescue of Major Morrison proved that there would always be situations requiring the unique combination of survivability, firepower, and precision that only the Warthog could provide. Sarah was determined to ensure that future generations of pilots would have access to aircraft designed specifically for close air support, knowing that when the mission mattered most, specialized tools in the hands of dedicated professionals could make all the difference between success and failure, between life and death. The tail number 78-0691 would continue flying missions with other pilots, but it would always carry the distinction of being the aircraft that proved, once again, why the A-10 Thunderbolt II remained irreplaceable in the American military arsenal.